again. So good night and welcome to another interview of The Shield on a Couch. I'm joined by Toschie Rod from the band Audrey Horne, who's going to release a new album, Devil's Bell, in April 25th. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm good, sir. And you?
I'm very good. So I got to listen to this new album, and I gotta say, the album really sounds like very classic 70s, 80s heavy metal. What inspired the sound of Devil's Bells?
Well, a lot of stuff inspires it. The most obvious thing is like some of the great bands from the 70s and 80s. But in general, we just write music, not trying to be inspired by anyone. We just write music. But I think the fact that we have some clear references in our music to some of the, like I said, the greater bands from the 70s and 80s. But I think what makes sort of Audrey Horne is the fact that we are five guys who grew up with a lot of the same bands, but listens to very different music. You know, if there's a party and one member of Audrey Horne is the DJ, the four other guys are probably going to leave within an hour because we have very different taste in music on many levels. But then we have some stuff that we all agree on, sort of, and that is of course the part that is more obvious. I write all the melody lines and all the lyrics, and I'm inspired by a lot of music that the other guys are not inspired by. I listen to a lot more, well, a lot of different music that they don't care too much about, to be honest. But and I think that's sort of what makes Audrey Horne is sort of the input from different angles from all of us. But in general, this album was sort of inspired a lot by us as a band, having been doing this for 20 years now and releasing a number of albums. We sort of have had some periods where we focus more on one thing, and then the next album might be a bit more diverse, and then one album is a bit more happy. And I think on this album we all wanted to make a heavier album, a bit more, maybe a bit darker album in some sense.
It's heavy, but you could feel like it's an album that it would be awesome for a party because it's really fast moving. And I gotta ask you, on the song, there's a few songs like Ashes to Ashes that it sounded like you channeled young Ozzy Osbourne, because you sounded like a young Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know if when I was listening to it, it's like you channeled not the way he sings now, but like back in the day, the Black Sabbath days.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I think the main reason why people tend to compare me to Ozzy Osbourne, not that we sound a lot alike, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we play heavy metal, and in heavy metal, very often the lead singer has a huge range in his voice. You know, like they can reach the really, really high notes, yeah, which I can't. My voice is more restricted in that area, and so it has always Ozzy's voice been. Me and him are sort of in the same range when it comes to our capability as a vocalist regarding how high and low we can go, sort of. But also Ozzy's, like, I write the melody lines in this band, and Ozzy's always been, even if like in Black Sabbath, where the rhythm was a very like a strong part of the music, his vocals were always not necessarily very he didn't focus that much on rhythm. He was sort of floating on top of it. He's always been sort of more floating, and that's very much how I write vocal lines as well. They're kind of floating more on top of something very intriguing, technically rhythm parts, you know. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But I've always like the great lead singers that has inspired me has, some of them are people, singers who have like a huge voice, but most of them are singers, well, all of them are singers who, whether they have like a huge range or not, are singers who have a strong personality in the way they sing. And sort of that's what inspires me. And Ozzy has been an inspiration to me, definitely. I'm not gonna try to lie my way out of that. But I think it has a lot to do with what I said, like the rhythm part and also the range, basically.
Yeah, and something that you do as a frontman, you know, I feel like most modern bands, they don't have that, you know, back in the 80s and that time, like the frontman was like a showman, you know, like a David Lee Roth, and, you know, like they were like the show, like you went to see the singer and the person who was in front of the band. Then in the 90s with grunge and other style, like it didn't become as important as having that flamboyant frontman. And obviously your style of singing, there's a flamboyance to you, like that you're bringing that type of frontman back, which is sometimes that it's kind of lacking nowadays. Who other frontmen inspired you, you know, in the style that you try to portray with Audrey Horne?
Well, to go back to what you started saying before I mentioned that, I agree with that. I'm sort of, if you come to see Audrey Horne as a live band, it's a lot about showmanship. It's a lot about entertainment. You know, we try to put on a really good show, not by using a lot of pyro techniques and stuff like that, but just by being energetic and by being present on stage, and including, our shows always end up in the crowd, and everything goes to shit, you know. We don't play it that good because we're in the middle of the crowd, and I always love that punk attitude, you know. I think a lot of like heavy metal and especially extreme metal and the more, there's always been this sort of a distance where you have the audience and then you have the band on stage, and the audience are sort of there to, this might sound a bit harsh, but sort of to worship the band on stage.
Oh yeah, like the black metal band. Yeah,
I always love the punk attitude where sort of the audience and the band are there on the same level, you know. They are, you can't have one without the other. You can have the band without the audience, and you can have the audience without the band, you know. So I always love that part, and I think that then there needs to be that, because I think like people who come to our show always have a good time, and they always leave saying that they felt sort of a good vibe. And that good vibe is basically because we love doing this, and we interact with the audience, because that's what makes a good show, basically. And I think, you know, the showmanship of the 80s and 70s with, you know, with Ozzy Osbourne and David Lee Roth, like you said, and a lot of other, like
Led Zeppelin.
Great,
yeah.
Led Zeppelin, definitely.
Yeah.
Robert Plant was a great like frontman, and with the grunge, it sort of killed it. But then again, with the grunge, something else came, something more like an honest. Even though, you know, people slag off the grunge because it was angst and self-pity and all of that. It was, of course, a bit too much of that. But at the same time, like like Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam is one of the greatest frontmen
He's
in
great.
rock business. I think, because he has an honest presence. It wasn't just like, I'm gonna fuck your girlfriend and your girlfriend and you know, that sort of Vince Neil attitude. He sort of had a more honest, and I think sort of what I'm trying to do is sort of to combine those, sort of have a bit of Eddie Vedder and a bit of David Lee Roth, because I think both are great performers, and like the people that I'm inspired by is definitely like Ozzy Osbourne, Bruce Dickinson, even Vince Neil, even though he's kind of weird these days, but you know, back in
old Vince Neil.
Yeah, and Robert Plant, Ian Gillan, all of those, but also like today, in today's music, or the grunge area with Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, and even today, I think, like today there are I've been, you know, on YouTube watching stuff like Youngblood, you know, Youngblood. They are like his live presence is just like, he's so enthusiastic, and he's so verbal about his beliefs and the way he communicates with the audience, which some people may see as kind of too much, because he goes into, I just love the way he like connects with people, and even though it's sort of the grunge thing where, you know, people come with their I have eating disorders, or I have anxiety, and he comes down and hugs them and sort of like, I'm like you, and I just fucking I think he's the real deal, because whether you like his music or not is not really important. He's a great performer because he's able to connect with the audience. The people who come to his show believes in him, believes in what he says, and I think that is sort of what's important, because if not, you have to go sort of to the total opposite and do stuff like Rammstein, where it's a theater where they're not supposed to talk to the audience. They don't want to engage with the audience because they are performing.
Yeah,
which is cool.
I totally get what you're saying. So what are your favorite songs from the new album?
My favorite songs are actually the opening and the closing track are my favorites.
Oh, Ashes to Ashes. Yeah, that's a great one. That's why I mentioned that one. I can't remember now the name of the closing track, but I know it's the longest.
Yeah, it's the one called From Darkness. And
yeah.
I love that song. And it's to me, it's sort of a melancholic, and I love the fact that it's long, and it's got a long instrumental part and so those two are my favorites, and everything in between is just shit, but that's nothing else in between is but those two sort of stand out to me personally.
Those are the standout tracks. Well, I thought there's a song called Breakout that it kind of reminded me a little bit about Breaking the Chains by Dokken in the 80s. It's, you know, it's about breaking out. It had some similarities, not that it sounds, but I was wondering, was it an homage to Dokken, because it's about breaking out and breaking the chains, and I thought like some similarities between those songs.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that, but yeah. I guess you're right, because it's definitely probably the most 80-ish track on the entire album.
And it's not that the riff sounded the same, but it didn't sound the same, but like you were break out and breaking the chains, like it seemed like it was an homage to that song. I'm like, I wonder if I should ask him, but yeah, it's a great song as well.
yeah, it hasn't occurred to me at all, but
Yeah.
but
Am I the first
guess
one to make that comparison?
you're the first one, definitely.
Yeah. So
Dude,
let's show
sorry,
the artwork for the new album
do a short.
coming out. So yeah, this is the artwork for the Audrey Horne Devil's Bell. Who did this artwork?
I did.
You did? Oh yeah, yeah. It turned out great. I like the colors, and like what are you trying to convey with this artwork for the audience?
I will tell you. Can we do a short break, dude?
A what?
Can we do a short break? Sorry.
Sure.
A short break.
Yes. Let me. So we were discussing the album artwork. So I'm gonna show it again quickly, just to talk a little bit about this. So the artwork you were telling me that you did this artwork. What were you trying to convey with the artwork?
Well, it's sort of, to me, it's the title "Devil's Bell" is just something that came. It's just, you know, when you write lyrics, often I try to make melody lines, and I just sing whatever comes to my head. And during this, when I was writing the melody lines for the song "Devil's Bell," the word "Devil's Bell" came to my mind, and I was like, what is the Devil's Bell? And I tried to sort of find out what it was, and I found, during my research for that, I found a poem about a poem called "The Inchcape Rock," which is about sort of a rock that ships outside of Scotland, where ships used to run aground, and you know, sailors died, drowned and died, and they built this bell tower there to sort of warn the ships in storms that there was a rock there. And of course, there was a pirate of some sort that tore down this because he benefited from these ships running into the rock, because then he could, you know, steal whatever cargo they had.
Oh yeah, I can see the ship right there on the
yeah, and of course, during a storm, he himself ran into that, and then he drowned. So the whole sort of the whole deal about the poem is karma, that, you know, what you do to others, and so on. And that sort of resonated to me in how we treat people around us, because a lot of the lyrics on this album is sort of about the more darker side of human nature, and to me, it's more about how things in today's society, things are portrayed very, we are very polarized in politics and in everything. It's black and white, and it's good and bad, and to me, it's like it's of course, it's not that simple, you know. So to me, a lot of it has to do with how we have both these sort of good and bad sides in ourselves. And so to me, that when I made the artwork, I sort of wanted to basically just kind of illustrate that point with how the world is today, that there are sort of bells and signs and signals out there, but we only read the signs that resonates to us, you know. How today with the internet and social media, is how we are, even we sort of go backwards in time and are being more polarized than we used to be. And so we need to sort of read even the signs that we don't agree with. You know, you have to if you take the war in Ukraine right now, how we you know, we get all information about how Russian soldiers are demoralized and how they sabotage their own equipment and they don't want to fight this war and blah, blah, blah. And then you have to think, yeah, probably a lot of them do, but are all this information necessarily true? Or is this sort of things that we are fed to sort of to see just one side of it, you know? Because at the same time, everything that Russian people are told, we are sort of laughing at and saying, how can they tolerate this disinformation? But of course, we are subject to disinformation as well, and so in many ways you have to, even though in just that case, I think we are probably we probably get more of the right information than the Russians do, the Russian population. Probably, yeah. But still, you always have to sort of, you have to hear the arguments from the sides you disagree with, because that's how you learn, that's how you evolve as human beings. So to me, that kind of that bell tower is sort of the symbol of how, this sounds very poetic, but it's sort of an illustration of how we need to sort of see the signs and educate ourselves and learn stuff. And you don't learn by just listening to the people you agree with. You have to listen to people you disagree with.
Yeah, that's what I like about talking about the artwork, because I get, obviously you did it, and I get all this information of what the artwork means to you and what it represents. So that's very interesting. So what would people be very surprised that is a musical genre that you like that people wouldn't expect from you?
Probably a lot of stuff that I listen to. I love country music. I listen to a lot of country, like old school outlaw country, more modern country in general. I listen to a lot of it. I love pop music. I love Harry Styles. I like Youngblood, like I said. Billie Eilish, all that. I like a lot of like the 80s, early 80s, like Eagles and Supertramp.
Okay.
I basically, I don't have a genre. I listen to.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're someone that likes, just if it's good, it's good. You know, it doesn't matter what.
Player, it's cool. If it's Dolly Parton, it's also cool. You know.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what.
Yeah. So what are the plans for the band now when Devil's Bells drop in April 25th? Do you have like a tour that you're going to do soon?
Yeah, we were planning to do a tour pretty soon, but that tour has been rescheduled because because of uncertainties, not just the pandemic in itself, but like the economy issues around it. The venues and the clubs are struggling financially, a lot of them. There are promoters who are scared because tickets don't sell as much as you should think. You know, when the society open, you should think that everyone would run to venues to see live, but people don't, because people's habits have changed over 2 years. 2 years is a long enough time to change someone's habits, and like gas, electricity, groceries, everything is rising. So everything is so uncertain. So we had to postpone that tour because because everything was too uncertain around it. So basically what we're doing is we're planning for after the summer, we're planning a European tour, and we're playing a tour here in Norway, where we're from. And then basically just start playing festivals again. Problem with festivals is that they've been booked for years and just moved. So I guess this summer we'll probably do do some festivals, but not as many as we would like to do. But next summer will probably be a way better festival summer for us, unless World War III breaks out. But
no, let's hope not. So
let's hope not.
The people can pre-order the album. Where can they pre-order the album? Will you have it on vinyl, CD?
It's on CD. It's on vinyl. It's on it's digital, and you know, you can go to Napalm Records to pre-order it, and other than that, you can listen to it.
Yeah,
download free if you want to, but we prefer that people actually buy the album. But of course, the most important thing is that people listen to it, no matter which way they do it. But so yeah, so when the album comes out, there's hopefully we'll see. In my opinion, I think it's one of our strongest album, because it's an album which was sort of a good thing about the pandemic, because
you got to work on it more.
Yeah, because and like it was cool because everything slowed down during the pandemic, which was sort of good, because the way it is now with the turnover of bands, there's new bands around the corner every time. The media is, you know, saying that rock and roll is dead, and the next day they have a savior of rock and roll, and then it's dead again, and then there's a new savior, and with the digital revolution, album sales dropped, so every band had to go on tour. So now even bands you thought had been dead for 20 years are out touring now. So everyone is touring, and everything is so,
it's a different ball game. Yeah.
So it was sort of, the pandemic sort of made it okay, because it wasn't just one band, it was like every band, the entire industry slowed down. So I think out of this, there's probably going to come a lot of really, really good albums, because bands were allowed to take the time to really focus on making a good album. And that's what we did. We used this time to sort of focus on creating an album where we could sort of dive deep into it even more than we've done on previous albums. So and I think that made for a strong album, and I think a lot of bands are gonna release some pretty good albums. Also, you know, difficult times always makes for great art. So,
no, I agree. Yeah, no one wrote an album through all easy things. So Toschie, I want to thank you, you know, for taking time to talk with me. I know it's really late there in Norway.
No. Cool.
But it was
out here, so I'm good.
Yeah, it was awesome talking to you. So I'll put a link so the people who are interested in getting the physical copy can do it, and
cool, man.
all of that. So until next time, this is Hector the Shield on the couch. I'll see everyone right here on the couch. Thank you and good night.
Chill, dude. Chill, dude. Bye.